Let's face it, if hunger wasn't an issue, getting lean would be as simple and straightforward as just saying you're gonna do it and then you actually go out there and do it. Unfortunately, hunger does exist in this reality and it's a pretty big deal, especially if your goal is to get to 15% body fat or get down to 10% body fat. And this is why in this video, I'm gonna share with you my top 10 tips for reducing hunger when getting lean. And I'm confident that if you apply all of these tips to your approach, that you're gonna get your hunger down to a much more manageable level, and it will make this whole process of getting lean a lot easier for you. So without any further ado, let's dive into my tip number 1, which is practicing hunger acceptance. Now, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. Some hunger is inevitable, and instead of being afraid of it, you want to understand how it works and why it happens. Hunger is an automated response that our bodies have to motivate us to look for more food. But it's the 21st century. We already know where the food is and we know how to get more of it. So there is no famine. But our bodies don't know that. They're still wired to the same operating system that they had 10,000 years ago. And most people don't really understand this. Most people interpret every bit of hunger as an emergency signal. They go into panic mode, and in fact, most people even carry food with them to prevent getting hungry to begin with. They don't want to experience even the slightest bit of that discomfort. And we must remember that there is no real danger running out of food. And once you internalize the biology of hunger and why it happens, you become a lot calmer. You become a lot less stressed out about it. Because the truth is, you will experience some of it. You can reduce hunger, of course, and we're going to dive into a lot of tips for that, but you also have to be able to accept some of it and move on. And just that act of acceptance will lower the power hunger has over you and will make the process a lot easier. Now that we got that reality check out of the way, let's talk about tip number 2, which is to avoid dieting too hard and dieting too long. If you set an aggressive calorie deficit, which would be, let's say, less than 10 calories per pound of your body weight or less than 22 calories per kilo of your body weight, you're going to have a very hard time on your journey. And this is why most people fail. They're trying to lose weight too fast. An example of that I would ask you here is, would you rather lose 1 pound per week sustainably without feeling much hunger versus losing 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds per week, but while feeling hungry most of the time? I would personally choose option number 1 any single day because I appreciate the consistency of option number 1, because I know that if I'm hungry all the time in option 2, I'd be falling off track, and hunger is actually just going to get worse the leaner I get, so it is going to be completely unsustainable for me. And this is something you got to ask yourself is, are you cutting too hard? And in general, my rule here is I try to eat as many calories as possible while still losing body fat at that 0.5% to 1% of my body weight per week, which would be a more sustainable rate. And we also have to talk about diet duration here, because what I do see is most people trying to get rid of too much weight in one go. And my recommendation here would be for every 10 to 15% of body weight that you do lose, that you consider doing a diet maintenance phase. And this is where you would raise your calories up to stay at that level for a couple of weeks, up to a month or so. And this does a couple of things. Number 1, reduces diet fatigue, which makes things a lot more sustainable long term when you resume a calorie deficit again to go for the next stretch of fat loss. But it also teaches you how to maintain, which is also very beneficial and something that most people don't know how to do, because it will help you prepare you for when you reach your ideal body weight and you want to maintain, you will know what to do. Because at the end of the day, what's the rush? What's the deadline? Are you trying to be a competitor, or are you trying to be lean and stay lean long term and have that lifestyle in place? If that's your goal, then you definitely want to consider those regular diet maintenance phases. Don't go too aggressive with your diet, and it will be a lot more sustainable overall. Now, speaking of your diet, now the third tip to reduce your hunger is to optimize your diet quality. Could you lose body fat eating only Twinkies? Of course you could. If you're in a caloric deficit, calories in, calories out, you're gonna get leaner. Is that ideal? No. On the other hand, is it ideal if you cut out all forms of processed foods from your diet forever, never eat out, and prepare all your foods at home where you can control every single ingredient that goes into your body? Well, yeah, you can definitely get leaner like that, but is that ideal in today's world with the lifestyles that we live in? Probably not for most people. So it's really about finding the right balance. And what I found works really well for me is thinking about 90% of my food and my calories being invested in what I would consider quote unquote good fuel, healthy foods, and then 10% of that being invested in those indulgences, in those treats, in eating out so I can enjoy some of those foods as well. So instead of thinking all the time, how can I include as much junk food into my macros and calories as possible, I'm thinking, how can I extract and squeeze in as much healthy food out of this limited caloric budget as I possibly can. And I'm also now preferring foods that naturally make me fuller the most and actually help me reduce that hunger level. And these would be low-fat Greek yogurts, for example, quarks, strawberries, oats, potatoes, foods that I found work really well for me. And these are things that you should also know for yourself. Which foods reduce the hunger the most? Which foods keep you the fullest for the longest time? And then you can optimize for those foods and will make the whole process a lot easier. And the cool thing about these foods specifically is that they're also usually lower caloric density. They're foods that are healthier overall to have it as a part of your diet. So you're gonna match your health goals with your fat loss goals. Because if your diet is full of processed foods, even if you magically had all the discipline in the world and the self-control to sustain that fat loss, you're still sacrificing your health to some extent by not cleaning up your diet, by not eating healthy. So I would highly recommend considering optimize your diet quality as a way to reduce hunger, but also match that with your long-term health goals. And this also brings me to tip number 4, which is dialing in your meal patterns as a way to reduce hunger. And what's going to help us do this is understanding how the hunger hormone ghrelin actually works. And there are 2 main things you need to know here. Number 1, ghrelin is released when you're used to eating. So if you're someone who is snacking a lot, eating 4 or 5 meals per day, then ghrelin is going to be released for that many times. And this is where individuals that have switched to intermittent fasting, eating 2-3 meals per day, not snacking, they've actually found that hunger levels go down and are only happening in that eating window for those 2-3 times. It just makes the diet a lot easier to sustain, so that's definitely something to consider doing. And the second thing you need to know about ghrelin is that it also comes in waves, so it doesn't continuously keep going up and up, making you hungrier and hungrier. Eventually it hits a peak and then it starts going down. And in practice, what this means is that if you're in a situation like the airport or a place where you don't really have good nutritious food options, you can just have some tea or some coffee or some water and wait it out. Your hunger levels will start going down. And while you wait, you also want to make sure to hit that like button below. That's going to make the wait a lot easier, also reduce hunger and help you get leaner. Speaking of reduction of hunger, let's move on to tip number 5, which is practicing mindful eating. If you're anything like me, you eat very, very fast. And if you combine that with checking your phone, your iPad, or your laptop while eating, you can quickly roll through an 800-calorie meal in a few minutes and wonder what happened. I had to consciously retrain myself to improve my relationship with food, to eat slower, chew the food, be mindful while I'm eating, avoid multitasking and distracted eating, and this has significantly improved the satiety levels that I get from my meals, which has helped me get leaner and reach those lower body fat percentages, so I would highly recommend you do so. And this brings me to tip number 6, which is avoiding excessive amounts of cardio. And this is something that I keep hearing from a lot of people, is once they go above a certain threshold of cardio, this is where they're starting to experience a lot higher hunger levels. Typically 1 or 2 sessions per week is fine, but once they go up to 4, 5, or 6 sessions per week, this is where problems start. And you can imagine it's a much easier thing to overeat 1,000 calories than it is to burn 1,000 calories. So if you're in a current situation where your amount of cardio is making your hunger levels go up and it's compromising diet consistency, you really have a couple of options. Option 1 would be to increase your calories and see if you can still lose body fat with this amount of cardio. Or option number 2, which would be to reduce the amount of cardio, replace it with walking, and see now if your hunger levels go down. Overall, diet should be the primary way you create your caloric deficit, and you don't want to over-rely on cardio to do that. And this is going to be much more sustainable, especially if you drop those hunger levels, and then you can really have that approach that works best for you. Now, moving on to tip number 7, which is cutting out alcohol. First off, alcohol is very calorie dense. Most people don't realize this. A single glass of wine has around 120 calories. An average beer is going to have 150 calories and even up to 200 calories. And who's going to have only one? And then on top of that, you have an appetite stimulating effect. And then on top of that, you also have lowered inhibition and poor self-control, which then makes you more likely to overeat. So this is where all those pizzas in the middle of the night happen. One of the best decisions that I ever made in my life when it comes to fitness and business success was to cut out alcohol. It not only made getting leaner and staying leaner a lot easier, but it also improved my productivity and my overall life quality. So if you're someone who is drinking alcohol on a regular basis, you really want to consider if it's taking more than it's giving. Is it really worth having as a part of your routine? And I would definitely recommend doing either a 30-day or a 60-day or a 90-day challenge to see how you feel without alcohol. And overall, depending on your personality, maybe you're like me where you need to completely cut it out, or you're someone who can moderate it and you can have only 1 or 2 drinks on very, very special occasions. So you do definitely want to consider this because it is making things a lot more difficult for you if you're drinking on a regular basis. So I would definitely recommend cutting out or reducing alcohol. Now, tip number 8 is leveraging effective distractions. And this is something you become a master at, especially when you're getting down to that 8% body fat level or 10% body fat level, where really you start thinking about food a lot more. I remember when I was at 7-8% body fat, I'd literally be dreaming about food. So you become good at distracting yourself to not think about it as much. What I found works really well is scheduling creative work, doing phone calls, gaming, doing sports, pretty much anything that can put me in that flow state where I'm just getting lost in a moment and just time flies by. And we all had that type of experience where hours just fly by and you lose track of time. That's exactly the type of activity that you want to use as your distraction from hunger. And it's highly effective, and it can be a tool that you just pull out when you really feel like the need for it, when you have some hours to wait until the next meal. Make the most out of that hour, schedule some effective distractions, and use this to your advantage. Now, tip number 9 for reducing your hunger levels is to organize your life to reduce your stress levels. Because one of the main reasons why so many people struggle with their diet is because they're constantly stressed out. Their sleep is being affected by that. They're making poor food choices. Their life overall is very chaotic, and it's hard to keep up with things, let alone pay attention to their food choices. And there's really a couple of things here that you can do. Number 1 is you can declutter your schedule and really keep the essential bits in there. And I would highly recommend reading a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown here. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It will really help you learn how to organize yourself better. Number 2 is pre-plan relaxing activities into your schedule so other things don't take up those time slots. And then number 3 is study productivity systems. One of my favorites is Getting Things Done by David Allen from the book Getting Things Done. And I would highly recommend doing this because we're not naturally wired to know how to organize ourselves effectively. And we all have 168 hours a week, but some people are getting way more out of that 168 hours in terms of value created and productivity, and they're doing so in a lot less stressful way. So it is a skill set, it is something you have to study, and it is something you have to master over time, and will really pay off a lot in terms of improving your life quality, but also reducing your hunger and helping you reach your fitness goals. Now, this brings you to tip number 10, which is learning how to reframe hunger, because a lot of this journey is a mental game, and we can associate different stories with different events. So for me personally, when I am hungry, I've associated that with my body losing body fat. So whenever I feel hungry, it's me getting leaner. So it's a positive thing instead of a negative thing by default, where you feel like you're suffering, you have to eat, it's survival mode, and it's the end of the world. I've also associated a story with it that I'm outside of my comfort zone. So I'm growing as a person, I'm becoming more persistent, I'm becoming more resilient, my mind is being more callous to resist uncomfortable things in life. And I know that if I want to get to a place that most people are not willing to get to, and it's pretty hard to get exceptional results, I know I have to do something that's a bit uncomfortable, and I accept that as a part of the journey, and that's just normal. Now, that doesn't stop me from being more efficient and learning more about this, but I also understand that there's a degree of acceptance that's necessary in order for me to get to that goal. And what's going to help you get to your goal is making sure to hit that subscribe button below, making sure to enable notifications by hitting the bell icon as well. If you want to work with me, details are in the description below. I'm going to leave a video here at the end that's going to really help you out, so check out that video, and I'm going to see you right there.